Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everybody. I am Pasta Jardula.
And I'm Fiorella.
And Jonny Sue is on the ones and twos. And today we have a special guest in the studio. Well, via Skype. She is an activist, an Air Force veteran. She's also a comedian in her spare time. She is running for Congress, District 12 in New York. From a brand new Congress, Lauren Ashcraft is on the couch.
Hi.
How you doing, Lauren?
Hey, I'm not a veteran, but I am a comedian.
Oh, God. How did I get... I thought I saw Air
Thank
Force
you.
veteran.
Thank you.
Didn't you have family that served?
Yeah,
Okay.
I do. Yeah, my grandfather was an Air Force veteran, and that's how he met my grandmother in Japan. So
That's
that's
right.
awesome.
I got the story mixed up. Well, she is a granddaughter of an Air Force veteran, and Lauren Ashcraft is in the couch. How you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I am a comedian, though.
You are.
Oh, okay.
You know, look, it looks
Awesome.
like I'm the one the joke's being played on today because I can't even get my papers right over here.
You're so corny.
They're gonna
Please
be-
stop doing comedy.
They're
fam.
going to be giving it to me after, Lauren. Like, way to go, Pasta. You messed it up from the get-go and stuff.
No, you're good.
So let's just jump right into this because candidate season is heating up. The new year has come. We're bearing down for February in Iowa, March for California. When is the New York primary, in fact?
June 23rd of
wow.
this year. So it's coming up, and soon we'll be petitioning to get on the ballot. So it's going to be all of us out on the streets trying to get the signatures, and all of us just really, really working hard.
Awesome. I know we've heard of brand new Congress, and we've seen what happened after Bernie's run in 2016, subsequently in 2018 with AOC and the squad. But what exactly makes you different than any of the other progressives right now running for office?
So we definitely are a coalition running together, especially the brand new Congress slate, who we're very, very close and kind of have become a family throughout this journey. But for me, I think, my background and having had my family be the example of what happens when representatives aren't paying attention to the people but are focused on profit. So my grandfather, actually the one that was an Air Force veteran, he met my grandmother in Japan. They immigrated to West Virginia together, where he was from, and he was actually killed in a coal mining accident trying to feed his family because of corporate greed. And my other grandfather on the other side of my family became a quadriplegic because he fell while he was working. And also just having my grandmother experience the xenophobia and racism she did as a Japanese woman immigrating to this country and just trying to be part of society here. And just having them all have these experiences and me growing up being part of this family has opened my eyes to the fact that corporate greed literally kills people. And my grandfather, who was a quadriplegic, his representatives just completely ignored him. And just walking around New York City now, there's so many places where people with disabilities, physical disabilities, are completely excluded, including the subway system, for example. And whenever I think about the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is 29 years old, I think about the fact that it's absolutely necessary, but it does the bare minimum. And we need to have people in office that are advocating to expand acts like that keep people safe and don't exclude entire populations of people from, getting to work and going where they need to go and going into restaurants and businesses. And so I would like to expand the Americans with Disabilities Act so that it's enforced by the federal government, so that in order to access the same places that you and I access, you don't have to sue.
Yeah.
You
consider yourself to be anti-establishment, don't you?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So
and
how-
I'm democratic socialist.
Okay, so how can we be assured if and when you get to Congress that you won't buckle down, that you won't buckle and not join the establishment? In other words, a lot of people think that some of the squad or some of the people are a little bit too friendly to Nancy Pelosi. How are we assured that you're going to continue to rage against the machine when you get there?
First of all, I have endorsed Shahid Buttar, who's running against Nancy Pelosi. And I think he was on this show.
It's going to be on next week.
Okay. Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, so I have no problem standing up for what I believe in whatever setting I'm in, because this doesn't change. And I'm running because of my morals and because of how angry I am that entire populations have gone completely ignored. My goal is that every single person has full and equal representation, regardless of their background and income and disabilities and ethnicities and gender, for example. And I have worked in the financial sector. That's where I became radicalized in terms of the economy and watching all this money being handed to these huge corporations in the form of corporate handouts. And being a democratic socialist that announced my run while working for one of the biggest banks in the world, I wasn't necessarily the most popular person because of my beliefs in my everyday life, but here I am, and still moving down this path because it's what I believe. So I would love to take my experience from the financial sector and sit on the Financial Services Committee and actually hold these industries accountable to us, not the other way around, where we keep bailing them out and watching people become homeless and lose their homes and lose everything because they're rationing their medicine that they need to survive.
What about the people that say, that are uncomfortable with the label of democratic socialist? What does that mean to you to be a democratic socialist?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time in both Germany and Sweden, and I saw the benefits of democratic socialism in that even I was able to go to the doctor when I got really sick and didn't have to worry about any kind of expenses that we get all sorts of surprise bills here, even when we are insured. My partner, for example, went to a clinic the other week and actually received a huge bill because where he went was out of network when he thought it was in network, which is a horrible surprise if you're an American or living here. And for a democratic socialist, it means to me that we put people before profit. And we live in such a capitalist society here in the United States where our healthcare is for profit. We see people paying back student loans for the rest of their lives for profit. We're killing the environment and ruining our chances at future life on this planet for profit. All of these things revolve around for-profit corporations that throw money and lobby politicians to keep ignoring their constituents.
Yeah.
And if we can get big money out of politics and actually focus on what's best for the people and for constituents, to me, that's democratic socialism, just putting people first.
Yeah, well, how do you plan to get all this change in legislation passed and a financially bought off Congress?
So that's you hit right on the point. It all ties to this big money in politics. And to me, that needs to be one of the first issues that we tackle. So ultimately, my goal is that we do move towards publicly financed elections. But my campaign did put out an idea that on your federal income taxes, you could check a box and get a tax credit that you could use to donate to federal politicians of your choice. And the only caveat is you cannot accept corporate or super PAC money if you're receiving that as a donation. So people like me who are grassroots people-funded candidates, throw me all of your tax credit donations. That's great. I'll take it. It would really help my campaign. But if you are like my incumbent, Carolyn Maloney, who is majority funded by corporate PACs, then she would have to add a question on her Act Blue form and make sure that she's not accepting people's tax credits. And people that donate via cash and check would actually need to be reached out to by her team, who would ask if that's part of the tax credit and would have to return that check or cash to them by saying, sorry, we choose to accept corporate influence over you.
Okay. So just kind of like going with what he said, we have a Republican Senate right now. We have a divided congressional House. what can we do as what can you do as representatives, and what can the people do to pass something like Medicare for all, to pass something like the Green New Deal? Because it's one thing if Bernie Sanders becomes president tomorrow and he goes in, he has said many times, it's not going to be enough for me to just push this legislation out because, it has to be approved by Congress and the Senate. What can the people do, and what do you plan on doing as a congressperson to help push that? Because there doesn't seem to be enough of us to make this happen legislatively.
Yeah. So as people, what we really need to do is keep educating each other about these issues and keep educating each other about why it's so important to get out and vote. If every single person voted and exercised their rights, then we would see so much change in terms of who's representing us, and what they're fighting for. And to make voting easier, we can do things like automatic voter registration. I actually like the idea of every single registered voter getting mailed a mail-in ballot with return postage already paid, and in that packet also including a list of who's running and like a brief summary on them and what they're running on and where to find more information. And the more that we can get people out to vote, the better. But in the meantime, I know people who they're not canvassing for any particular politician at all, but they're going around and talking about single-payer Medicare for all and having conversations with people about issues that are affecting all of us, regardless of what side of politics you're on. And I know that I live in New York and I am a Democratic socialist, but I have a lot of family in Pennsylvania and, in not such urban areas. And whenever I have conversations with them about single-payer Medicare for all, as an example, it started off very politically, and then it turned into us just talking as humans about the fact that you shouldn't go bankrupt if you go to the emergency room. Yeah. Things as simple as that. Removing politics from it and having conversations with people as people is really important. So actually, the fact that you talk about these issues on your show and that we're raising awareness in every way that we can is a really important step.
Yeah. That seems like, because that was my next question, is like when you look at your issues page, you see all the things that the progressives love, a Green New Deal, Medicare for all. Are you going to use that same tactic that you use at the Thanksgiving table when you knock on a libertarian-minded door in your district or an independent who might not necessarily put our values first before theirs?
Yeah, and I've had these conversations with people across all parties, and whenever it comes down to it, we can all agree that big money is drowning our politics and that we shouldn't go bankrupt if we get ill. I think the question is just how are we going to implement that? I know that, for example, Bernie Sanders has a very detailed plan. I'm very supportive of single-payer Medicare for all and making sure that we completely get for-profit industry away from our healthcare. But if we put all of that aside and kind of put it in a drawer and just have conversations as humans, it really has gone very successfully.
Yeah. You often talk about, and, are pictured with AOC. AOC is one of the squad. She's been really instrumental in pushing the overtone window, I would say. But what areas do you think we could still improve on that she particularly could, and then you coming in as well could bring more into the fold?
Yeah, so we all come with unique experiences and unique histories and into this. So she's amazing and she has moved our politics and our conversation pretty much by herself in so many ways. But if somebody comes in with a different, unique experience and brings up something that she might not have thought of on her own, that's exactly what having a Congress full of progressives is for. So I know brand new Congress, we have a few dozen people running together as a coalition, and we all think differently but have the same morals. And I'm really excited about seeing some of the slate or all of the slate getting into Congress, because it's a really great group of people. Yeah. But the more people that we can put into office who are real everyday people who experience the issues that everyday people in their district do, the better.
Yeah. Is there an area in particular where you might say AOC, for the most part, I'm with her, but here, nah?
So I love the Green New Deal. I think that we can make public transportation free as part of it. That's one thing that I'm really pushing on my end, especially in New York City, that we've seen poverty being criminalized. Right now, it's $2.75 to ride the subway. And for people who can't afford it and jump turnstiles, we've seen videos of loaded weapons being pointed at them, of really aggressive and violent arrests. And I am just completely against the criminalization of poverty and the criminalization of Black and brown people, which we're seeing in New York City at the moment. And one of the ways to combat that and the climate crisis at the same time is to make public transportation free. So I think that we should nationalize public transit and use federal dollars to upgrade the entire system and make sure that it gets people where they need to go in an efficient way, and that it's accessible for every single person, regardless of their abilities.
Yeah, and I mean that's very democratic socialist of you, but which I'm all for. But I just want to kind of shift into foreign policy, because we're big foreign policy people here on the couch, and foreign policy is an area where I feel the majority of our Congress, even our good ones, are still weak on. It is an area that particularly has been led by neocons, in both parties, and that has led us into what we're looking at now. Proxy wars, regime wars in places in the Middle East and Latin America. Do you believe, based on what we know so far, that Nicolas Maduro is a dictator, or do you believe he is the rightfully elected leader of Venezuela? But does that even matter? Because should we even be involved in Venezuela?
I don't think that we should be deciding who other countries' leaders are. We've done that so many times throughout world history, and my undergrad degree is in international relations, and part of what I learned is how many regions we have destabilized because of our interventions and because of, in my opinion, being imperialist. So we're seeing right now, we just assassinated one of the most powerful leaders in Iran, and we did not have the right to do that. We violated international law by doing so. And I am very against imperialism and interventionism. And I do really worry about how many more countries we can destabilize by getting involved. So I think that we should allow countries to decide who their leaders are. And we should not be militarily involving ourselves unless we are being actively attacked, which has not happened in a very, very long time. So we should have avoided a lot of wars.
Yeah. So as pertaining to Venezuela, then, would you vote for sanctions, against sanctions, or will you defer to the caucus leadership?
I don't think that we should be placing sanctions on Venezuela.
Yeah.
Good answer.
I mean,
Good
yeah,
answer.
I agree. I mean,
Sanctions
are a way to starve an economy, and we've done it time and time again. We've done it to Iran many times. One of the reasons why they've been in the precarious situations they've been in. But if anybody in the U.S. government should be held accountable for their actions on Bolivia coup, do you think they should be held accountable? I mean, considering what we did in Bolivia and how involved we were in that.
Yeah. Yes, if we can find people that have caused what's going on down there and been a part of it, I do think that we should hold them accountable. It is very scary to see what's happening in Bolivia, where we're seeing, again, very right-wing leaders force religion on indigenous people. Yeah. And it's a trend that's happening all over the globe that we do play a hand in, and we absolutely should not. So again, we should not be intervening in the way that we do in all of these countries and further destabilizing them. And whenever we look at the immigration crisis, and we look at all of the people that are having to leave their homes and their families in order to survive, we've played a huge role in that globally, and especially in the global South. And the less we can do to intervene and the more we can do to actually just help, the better.
Is Iran an enemy of the state in your mind? And being that we're already in the situation we're in, how would you handle the situation in the Middle East?
So the situation in the Middle East, it goes back a very, very long time in terms of just how much we've tried to intervene there. We should have not been in any wars in the Middle East. And it goes back to pre 9/11. It goes back whenever we're looking at things that have allowed what's going on right now. I look at the AOMF. That's given 3 presidents now the unilateral power to do whatever they want to do. My opponent, Carolyn Maloney, has approved that, for example, and I would have voted no. Barbara Lee was the only person to vote no on the first one, and she should really she should get a lot of credit for that. Whenever we look at who voted for and against the Iraq war, it's scary. Given how many people who voted yes are still in power, especially knowing what we do now, that war revolved around, a lot of it was for personal profit for the decision makers. And knowing that now, and knowing the people who are still moving in the direction of war, who voted yes for the war in Iraq, it's scary how many people are still sitting in Congress. And also giving Trump the bloated military budget that he asked for, including Space Force, which is ridiculous. My opponent voted yes on his military budget, and there actually would have been a provision that kept Trump from being able to act with the AOMF that she voted no for. Yeah. So there are so many things that I have a lot of issues with a lot of sitting members of Congress because they claim to be anti-war, but they are not. And they have given Trump everything he needs to be doing exactly what he's doing. Yeah. So, I will do everything that I can to prevent wars and prevent one person from having that kind of power.
There, in 2016, were a lot of issues when a lot of people went out to vote during the primary between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. In California alone, we experienced a purging of provisional ballots. Since then, has any sort of bill or provision on election integrity caught your eye? And what do you think we can do as Americans? Because it doesn't matter how many people vote for a progressive if there are issues from both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party regarding the integrity of our elections.
Yeah, so one of the things that happened to me personally is that I was registered, I think it was independent, for too long. In New York State, you actually had to change your registration to Democrat 6 months before the primary, and I was not aware of this. So I was one of the people that wasn't able to vote for Bernie Sanders in the 2016 primary. I know it still breaks my heart to this day. What happened after that, because of a lot of people who really protested what happened, is we were able to get the window of time much smaller, and now in order to vote in the Democratic primary in New York, you have to change your registration by February 14th, which is a much smaller window. I think that we should be moving towards bills for automatic registration, like I said, and there shouldn't be any kind of huge time window in order to change your registration. You should be able to do it day of. Yeah. And anything to do that federally to make it easy to vote, I don't understand why we keep putting so many blocks and restrictions on people just being able to exercise their voice. Other things that I've seen is that regardless of quote unquote criminal history, you should be able to vote. And one of the things that I'm most passionate about is that every single person, every single American should be able to vote regardless of anything at all. And I like the idea of voting being able to be done at 16. Right now it's 18, which as long as every single person can vote regardless of anything after that, I am for it. But we're seeing so many ways in which people's rights are being taken away from them, and criminal history is one of those. So I am for any bill that removes that as a block to people being able to vote.
All I'm hearing in my head is my friends from New Jersey calling me the day after. Come on, Bernie Sanders would let the Boston bomber vote? You can't do that. And I'm like, well, it's, I think it's more deeper than that. I think, getting a record on a lot of people of color for almost doing nothing, like selling loosies, and then taking away their right to vote is definitely a master plan. Let's talk a little bit about our civil liberties, because I'm a big civil liberties guy. Do you think that Alex Jones should have been deplatformed?
Wait, can you give me a little bit of background about that? I'm blanking.
Oh, well, Alex Jones was, well, let me give you a different question. How about this one?
Yeah.
Do you think that Donald J. Trump's Twitter should be suspended?
No. I actually, it's all going to be evidence someday, in my opinion. So.
Nobody's ever given us that answer. That's great.
Yeah, that's a unique answer.
That's a great one.
Well, basically what it is like, Alex Jones, he was taken off of YouTube because of, they said he was inciting violence, whatever the case. But what happened is after that, they started taking leftist channels out of YouTube. And so we've encountered that sort of suppression ourselves where, they suppress our videos, they don't list them. People are like, hey, we click on your video and it says error, things like that. So my personal opinion, as much as I dislike Alex Jones, because one of my uncles loves the guy, and I would always get into arguments with him about it. I can't stand the guy. I was not for taking him down because I knew that was going to come back on the leftists, and that's exactly what happened. So Kamala Harris was one that during the debate was calling for the removal of Donald Trump's Twitter. And I mean, I think that just personally eventually comes onto everybody else, right?
Right. Yeah. And I know he violates Twitter terms every single day, but I do think it's important to not ban people for exercising their free speech. It is scary that we have a president that tweets the things that he does, but I do think that we need to let him do it so that we're not creating that world where we're just all censoring each other.
Exactly.
Yeah. As pertaining to presidency, do you believe that any blue will do at this point? Would you vote for Joe Biden?
I will do everything I can to make sure that the nominee is not Joe Biden. I really have to think about that. I will vote, and I will vote for the person that I think will do the least damage. So if it's between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, it would be Joe Biden, but I would be really upset about it. So I think that if we can get Bernie Sanders as the nominee, I would be so excited to see that kind of platform actually be the future of our country. And there are a lot of people still in the running that I would prefer over Joe Biden. I worry. I will vote.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people do. Are you've seen what's happened with impeachment? How Nancy Pelosi hasn't even sent the documents. But at this point, do you think impeachment actually helped? Do you think it's done anything for us? Really? Like, are you for it at this point?
So I was actually for it. I was for it before my incumbent was. I called for it since the beginning of me announcing to run for Congress. I think that it is the responsibility of people running running for Congress and also sitting Congress people to do what's right, including impeaching a president with impeachable offenses. So he has so many things that we could impeach him on. I am very confused as to why we chose such a narrow scope of the process.
Right.
And right now, he's committing war crimes, which is another huge issue that we should be taking much more seriously. But I keep seeing establishment leaders in Congress drop the ball. So as it happened, I think the impeachment process was not the way that it didn't do what I hoped it would, which is actually impeach. And I would like to see a full trial happen in which we see the evidence, we see witnesses, we see everything presented in the way that it should be. But the scope was so narrow that I just think it's a huge loss for at least the Democratic Party.
Yeah, you said that you wanted him impeached when you announced your run for candidacy. What specifically would you have liked to see Donald Trump get impeached on?
I mean, he's been profiting from his office from the day that he's been in office, which is a huge problem. We're seeing him profit from leaders using his business. That's one of them. And I feel like if a Democratic leader was doing the exact same things, or if, for example, Barack Obama were doing the exact same things, there would have been a lot more talk about the emoluments clause, for example. There would have been a lot more talk about every single thing that he's doing, but we're not seeing his actions being taken as seriously as they should be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I started out thinking, maybe I understand why they're impeaching him, but I agree with you. Like, what he was impeached on is a phone call. Yeah. We really followed the whole issues with Biden and Ukraine and what the Democrats did, and it just seems like they're avoiding their own accountability as well. Mm-hmm. So it has turned into not helping, I think, them. It's made it look like this sort of mess, and then Nancy Pelosi hasn't sent in the papers. So I agree with you. There's so many things we should have impeached him on, but they chose the wrong thing, and now I just think it's a waste of time. I think we need to focus on removing him completely out of office by voting him out, which I think is, the best thing. I guess last question, I just want to say, who would you like to see as Speaker of the House at this point?
Wow. I would love to see any of the members of the squad as Speaker of the House. I want to see any kind of person who was funded in a grassroots way, who clearly represents the people as Speaker of the House. And I think we're moving in that direction, especially with, the huge coalition running across the entire country. Every single time there's an election cycle, we're going to see more people-powered people actually elected, which is really exciting. And then the more that we can get into office, the more likely it is that we can get big money out of politics with legislation. So I am optimistic. I see the light at the end of the tunnel. It takes people who are watching to be active and get out and vote and donate to politicians and inspire you. Check out who donates to them first, though, to make sure you're not funding a corporate PAC funded politician, which is really important. But the more we can get people involved, the more we're going to see that Congress actually represents us.
So last question to get you out of here. District 12 is very much split. You got Manhattan, you got Queens, you got a little bit of Brooklyn. Who are you going to support this year, the Mets or the Yankees? It's an important question out there. This is going to cost or get you votes. Mets or Yankees? Final answer.
So I live in Queens, and I've been to a lot of Mets games.
There you go. Appreciate that. Lauren, tell everybody out there where they can find you and give us a little closing out. Thank you so much for coming on the Convo Couch. Go right ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I am at laurenashcraft.com, which is where you can donate to our grassroots campaign. Right now, our average donation is $25. So every donation makes a huge difference and takes us a step further. So thank you for considering donating to our campaign. And also you can find me on social media at Vote Ashcraft. And I'm usually yelling about what I'm angry about on Twitter.
That's where we all go.
We love the Twitch. You know what I'm saying? Thank you so much for joining us, Lauren. Good
We
luck
really
in District
appreciate
12.
it. Thank
Really.
you, and good luck.
For
Thanks
Pasta
so much.
Jardula,
And Fiorella.
Jonny Sue on the ones and twos with Lauren Ashcraft.
Convo out. We'll be right back.
Bye, guys.
Bye.